Want to know all the secrets to everything? Repeatable patterns you can observe and check for yourself. The theory of everything is what I call probably my best work at proving just this. Forget what people tell you, an examination of clues you can follow yourself and look into esoterically or hidden in plain sight or with your own eyes that lead to one inevitable conclusion. Theory of everything. If you look back at the ancient world, you notice the same patterns, remixed stories and gods with only slight PR and marketing variations over time and cultures, but the same baseline core themes, agendas, and symbolism. You see it carried on through mystery secret societies. The same symbols, the same re-rolled around technology. The Illuminati, which this is all for entertainment by the way, dates back to prehistory, operating under different names, traced throughout time according to legend, including the Brotherhood of the Snake being one of these names, and more mentioned in the Sumerian ancient scripture tablets. Did the Anunnaki create man, or did they descend and genetically alter them for their purposes? Where are they now? What does one of the oldest writings say? Let's check this clip out.
The ancient Sumerians wrote that after a slave rebellion, the Anunnaki went into hiding and ruled over humanity using human proxies and Judas goats.
The Sumerian tablets say that there was a slave rebellion and they rebelled against the Anunnaki, and the Anunnaki went into shadow ruling basically through human, probably half-breeds. Also, the Anunnaki sound a lot like the Tuat De Anan from Ireland. Similar to Anunnaki, you see that word Anu, which is the Sumerian god, also Anubis, one of the Egyptian gods. And Anu is where you get the Anno Domini in the Latin, the year of the Lord. The Anunnaki were bearded, and you can see how pharaohs and emperors tried to copy and imitate this through wooden beards, and also the imitation of the cone head patterns, or the cone hats, usually made out of metal or gold, which I've covered before. You see the same patterns of ancient gods descending and teaching stuff to man, gods that often take a serpentine form. You can find this in the Mayan culture. The whole pyramid structure at Teotihuacan is built like a dragon, so on certain days when the sun comes down, it resembles a dragon, as the sun goes down the staircase of the serpent head, and they worship the serpent deities. Egypt's pyramid also has an interesting sun effect on a special day, also with serpentine and bird-like beings being depicted.
During this age, the pharaohs worshipped and served over 2,000 human-like gods. In return for managing over the human slave population, the pharaohs were promised eternal life. They were taught that if they had their dead bodies carefully preserved, they would be brought back to life and live forever as gods. This is quite similar to today's world elites who believe they will find immortality by merging with artificial intelligence. Were they promised the same lie of immortality by the fallen ones?
Also, check out the headdress that the pharaoh wears. You're telling me that's not supposed to emulate a cobra? The Nagas, these serpentine godlike beings, are in many cultures. Asia, South Asia, India, Cambodia. Origin of serpent beings associated with knowledge, just like the Garden of Eden story. Also in India is the amazing temple Angkor Wat, which is aligned to Draco, the constellation, and has dragon creatures. Draco also has aligned pyramid shafts. And there's serpent mounds in America, because Amaru means the sacred serpent, basically. Ka meaning breath. Mysterious origins of the place we live, possibly. Natives with giant stories and mounds is an interesting rabbit hole, as is shadow rulers with the Judas goat concept and ruling from behind the scenes for millennia, possibly, or longer.
The Aryan leaders of ancient India claimed obedience to gods who fell from the sky. These human-like gods were called Asura. The Nazi inner circle of the Third Reich claimed to have been following orders from these very same Aryan gods.
The ancient India temples is something we're going to come back to as well. Sophisticated moving parts, legends of possibly flying pieces, tying into Vimana, tying it all into CERN and how CERN looks like some frequency patterns and mandalas from ancient times as well. Ancient secrets, liquid architecture, songs expressed in the visual cymatic patterns, a lot of which you see repeated today. This is just scratching the surface. Much deeper dive coming on the theory of everything. Check out the playlist on my page. See you next time on The Savage Truth. Theory of everything continued. Around the world you see the same patterns, like gods descending from the sky, teaching people stuff. Cultures from far distances apart that were said to have no communication, but they come up with the same beings like this. One from Mexico, one from China. This pattern is duplicated hard all over the old world. Check my Theory of Everything playlist. Also check out Lord Bacal. Does that look like technology? I've already covered this winged sun disk in detail. You can find that also on my page. That symbol, as well as the following symbols, have also been seen in this pattern. The Anunnaki handbag and technology patterns, with the handbag, the watch, and a whole other packet of technology they're frequently portrayed with that I'll come back to on its own episode. Possible portal frequency manipulation like you see in They Live, as well as genetic engineering, which is what the whole Tree of Life is about. You also see these same handbags in Sumer, in Göbekli Tepe, and with this spaceship guy, Lord Pakal. There's also significant time markers that you see referenced all over the world, like the flood, for example. Also, I covered that there's evidence that Noah possibly built Göbekli Tepe. From Noah landing all the way to Babel, which is referenced worldwide, Tower of Babel stories, which I've also covered. The Tower of Babel really is the key to understanding almost everything. Remember that. We're coming back to something later. All the way from Babel to Abraham. Abraham is referenced in many religions, especially the ones stemming from the Middle Eastern area, all the way to South Asia. But speaking of Abraham, I've heard this comment before that the Bible's a ripoff of other stories, which clearly it's not. There's more documents of that than a lot of other things, but anyway, the point I'm making is, where do you think Abraham was actually from? He was from Ur, which was Iraq, Sumer, the whole Middle Eastern area. Babylon, the origin of Mystery Babylon, and then even neighboring the Iran, Persian, Akkadian, Mesopotamian cultures. That entire area stemming with Abrahamic religions. But obviously Abraham knew all the stories of the Anunnaki, and his fathers worshipped the gods. Yahweh called him away from these other gods, spun him off, and started his own earthly following with the man Abraham. Check out these words and these gods in India. It's Brahma and Saraswati. They're anagrams for Abraham and Sarah. The first reference to Brahma and Saraswati is a couple hundred years after Abraham, appearing for the first times in later editions of the Rig Veda. So follow the thread all the way from Sumer, through Egypt, which we've covered, Greek, Roman, all those empires, and even the current through magic, the United Nations, etc. And mystery school secret societies are all tied into the Mystery Babylon religion, which you see culminating at the Tower of Babel. Check out my pinned Nimrod Babel video. And Sumer was Babylon, the origin from the Anunnaki to the Tower of Babel, and the Mystery Babylon religion, which is referenced coming back in the end times in the book of Revelation in the Bible. It's all one religion. Further evidence that all these religions and all these countries which fallen angels planted are all just sort of one religion. Just different spin-offs, remixes, and sort of scams/schemes to get the slave population to obey. This is all for entertainment, by the way. Consider this a movie review. All religions being the same and remixed except for one, which we'll be coming back to. In the meantime, are we being thinned, farmed, and herded by these fallen angel, tyrannical, diabolical, anti-human, soul-sucking locust ancient deities that need us to build something for them?
The Bible teaches us that Lucifer and the fallen angels rule over the earth. And when you look at the historical record, it almost seems as if they are farming us and thinning the herd every 100 years. For the past decade, Hollywood has produced an endless stream of doomsday end-time movies. The History Channel alone has deeply embedded the concept of UFOs and aliens into our perceived reality. Are they preparing us for the end? For another great culling of the human race? The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he does not exist, until we somehow awaken to defeat the fallen ones and escape this prison planet.
Well, just like in the movie Stargate, these are all fake gods, just like the Sumerian tablets mentioned about how the Anunnaki went into shadow ruling through human proxies. But these proxies and Nephilim, especially as they got less percentage Nephilim, less percentage fallen angel, they just kept pretending that they were gods and had special powers. And this is the origin of leaders, governments, and rulers around the world. Coming from the stars, the right to rule. Which is also why most people have no idea who Jesus really is and just hear a bunch of bad stuff about the church, which is nothing to do with what Jesus is. Jesus is the most hated person in the Matrix controlled by these fallen angel and all their money groups, which controls everything basically. The Matrix has hidden it from you. Jesus came to set everybody free. Check out Yahweh's heart from these two verses right here. From Isaiah, learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, and plead the widow's cause. Also from Isaiah, is this not the fast that I have chosen to loose the bands of wickedness and to undo the heavy burdens and to let the oppressed go free? and that ye break every yoke. Clearly you can see what God's heart for humanity is, which is the opposite of the manipulation that these tyrannical rulers always have us in. Look at everybody's lives today, it's a reflection of it. History really is a game of telephone, with the winners telling a lot of the story, and the people in charge of the Matrix and the rulers which we discussed. But one source really helps you make sense of it all. Rather than having to deny the Sumer Enuma Elish, or the Bhagavad Gita or ancient Vedic records, or the Roman and Greek Mount Olympus, another mythology, one sense really makes sense of it all, and that's the Hebrew source, which is Enoch and the Bible, telling you about the fallen angels and how they started and rule over countries, which evidence from all over the world aside from the Bible and the patterns which I've shown you display. A group of angelic rebels broke rank, divided and marketed themselves differently all over the world. This one world mystery Babylon religion will be regrouped on the end of time by the Antichrist. Kind of like when you hear a slightly different story from a group of kindergartners, but then there's this one kid in the class that really helps make sense of it all. Speaking of kindergarten, brief rabbit hole, when you were a kid and thought it was kindergarten, that word garden really does come from that word garden. It's a child garden, which is weird if you think about Cabbage Patch Kids and that whole rabbit hole with homunculus, incubator babies, and growing babies from the whole Tartarian rabbit hole. In close, the Book of Enoch says that there was a war in heaven and a mass dispersion, and these beings went all over the world, starting cultures demanding to be worshipped, demanding sacrifices. And like I said, Jesus came to flip the script, and instead of demanding sacrifice, he gave himself as a sacrifice once and for all, to let as many people that wanted to leave this matrix of fallen angel domination to come roll with the big dog. Check out this clip in close of Jesus and the real heart of Jesus and how he opposed these Serpentine rulers.
Grown in our garden. To that I say, woe to you Pharisees! You tithe mint and dill and cumin, measuring carefully the last speck, while neglecting what is actually important of the law: justice and mercy and faithfulness. You blind guides, straining out an ant while swallowing a camel. Look at these people. What have you done to help them?
See you next time on The Savage Truth.